Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Georgia Southern Eagles, who finished 6-7 last season and capped off their 2023 season with an appearance in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring game on April 20th. We have some special guests joining us today. GATA is a podcast dedicated to all things Georgia Southern Eagles football. It is for the fans. It is by the fans. He is Matt. He is Cody. Together, they are GATA Talk. They can be found at GATA Talk Podcast on X. Welcome to the show, boys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, well, let's move over to that defensive side of the ball and let's talk about the guys up front along that defensive line. Kerryon Smith transfers to Tennessee State. Miles Winslow transferred to McNeese State. Other than that, the crew looks primed to get in the backfield a lot in 2024. This group is highlighted by the sack duo of Isaac Walker. And I might need some help on this one. Is it Elhaju Fall? Is that how you say that?
I think you're pretty close. Yeah, I'm not a pronunciation expert, but
yeah, I'm not reading over here, so I'm not going to try to correct. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'm no expert either. I always got some questions, but that's what I'm going to go with. But if you need a tackle for a loss, don't worry. You got guys like Davion and Justin Rhodes, along with Deshaun Davis and Latrell Bullard coming back. How did that unit look in the spring?
Good. They were able to kind of, I believe, shut down the run as much as you can when you had some studs like White and OJ Arnold back there. And they were able to actually get the quarterback at times. Again, I think taking advantage of a new offensive line that's trying to come together and kind of understand the new offensive line coach. But I look for this, and I know we'll get to the linebackers here soon, but I look for the defensive line and the linebackers to really anchor this defense. And kind of hopefully take the step that we need on defense to make our team successful. The last 2 years on defense has not been that great. If you look at the points per game, yards per game, it's really been terrible. I think both seasons have been over 30 points a game. One of the seasons 2 years ago, I believe we were giving up well over 400 yards a game, and last year was right at like 380, 390 a game that we were giving up. So a little down, but still not great. I think it starts with the defensive line. It has to start with getting pressure on the opposing quarterbacks, and it's going to have to start with shutting down the run, which we did better last year, but it's got to take the next step if we want to see a bowl game this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. We've got some dudes on the line. I mean, you mentioned Isaac Walker. He's a disruptor. He'll force fumbles. He'll bat balls. Bullard is a huge guy at 360, 6'1", 360. Just that you can't miss him. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a sizable and athletic line, probably the most we've had since being an FBS program. Frankly, defensive line has always been not one of our strong suits, I would say. And we've really focused on bringing in size, but also talent and athleticism on both sides of the ball. But yeah, really looking forward to that unit.
Do you feel like, given this depth here at D-line, you feel like that defense can really be aggressive with their play calling here in 2024?
Yes. I feel like they should be able to take more chances at going after the opposing quarterback and not trying to play safe. And hopefully as well being able to be more sound in run defense and understanding where they're supposed to be at gap alignment and that sort of stuff, that they should pretty much well know they should not be making the same mistakes they made in year 1 and year 2.
Yeah, and I mean, second year under defensive coordinator Brandon Bailey, we saw a huge – the numbers didn't change that much, but I would say from like an aggression and kind of taking risk standpoint, we did see more of that under Brandon Bailey than we did in year 1. So I'm definitely, expecting to see a risk-taking or aggressive defensive line this year of, blitzing on third down and things like that, where we saw much more conservative play calling 2 years ago.
Moving over to the linebacker group, Kadri Jackson has graduated and Terrion Lee Jr. Left shortly after the spring game, but the room is highlighted by the return of their leading tackler in 2023 and all Sun Belt first-teamer Marquise Watson-Trent. How did the linebackers look in the spring?
Great, led by Watson. That unit should be pretty stout. I know that MJ Stroud is going to be in part of that linebacker group, moved out from defensive end, I believe, and is now going to be probably starting alongside Watson-Trent this year. So I think, again, that is another piece of the defensive puzzle that I think we've kind of missed is depth there as well. We should have it this year. But yeah, it's going to be led by Watson-Trent, no doubt. And he's been, I would say, probably the leader of the defense. Definitely last year, if not the last 2 years, he's kind of been that stud, that guy that we've needed.
He's the heartbeat of the defense, right? He's not going to like wow you per se, right? Just with talent or speed or anything like that. But man, I mean, he's just one of those guys you're going to look back and 10 years or so, man, like that was a player, right? Like that was a guy that just would give his all. He's dealt with injuries. He's dealt with coaching changes. He's dealt with all kinds of stuff, right? But he shows up, he does his job, he leads by example, and really just excited to see him play another year.
Is Stroud the one that you guys feel like is going to fill that void left by Kadri Jackson?
I believe so. Yeah, he should.
So the defensive backfield lost Seth Robertson to App State. Demel Hickman and Shamar Bartholomew both graduate. But overall, again, a nice core of guys returning. This defense is shaping up pretty good. Honestly, this group also looks really deep. They add DeAndre Morris and Chance Gamble from Kennesaw State. They got Ethan Pouncey from Florida that comes in post-spring. Of the guys that were there, in the spring, how did that unit look to you, Cody?
Improved. I wouldn't say that it's something that is fantastic or great by any means, but definitely an improved unit that you can tell has, I believe, taken at least a little bit of a step forward. I wouldn't say a great big step, but they've taken, I think, a necessary step to go forward. You mentioned that we have a couple of transfers from Kennesaw State that's coming down. You mentioned the transfer from Florida that we have. To me, I think the big thing that we have is we have TJ Smith coming back, who I think entered the portal for a brief minute, and then we were able to have him come back and lead the secondary. We also have a young man, Cam Williams, who was injured last year. And I think he was injured in either the Coastal game or the Georgia State game. I can't remember which one it was, but you could tell when he went down, there was a noticeable, I would say, a big part of our defensive back unit that was missing. I mean, we kind of dropped off there when he got injured. So to see Cam Williams back healthy as part of that safety group with TJ Smith, I think is going to be huge. And then also we have Mark Stanley Jr., who should be in the nickelback position that should be able to help and fill in as far as that fifth defensive back on the field.
We also have a new defensive backs coach,
Yes.
Darius Stafford, who's a alum of us, former player. And so, excited to see that. I agree with Cody. I think it's probably been the weakest position group the past 2 years. I wouldn't say necessarily the weakest when it comes to depth or talent. It's just we haven't seen it realized on the field, right? Certainly 2 years ago, it was pretty rough at times with coverages and just, like Swiss cheese out there. Last year got a little bit better. But again, we have some guys and we have new leadership. So, I think you'll hopefully see some improvement on that side.
I mentioned Damel Hickman and Shamar Bartholomew both moving on, to post football lives. Who steps up in those roles? I know we mentioned a lot of guys.
I think if I remember correctly, Bartholomew played the nickel position, so I'm hoping Mark Stanley can step up into that role. In terms of the other, I think you want to have. I want to see Cam Williams. I want to see the transfer Gamble from Kennesaw State. I think right now he's slotted to be a starter at corner. I think I would be very impressed to see kind of what he brings to the table and see if he can hold on to that starting position through the fall, and just sort of, again, solidify hopefully the depth that we have in that group. Because like I said, I think the pieces are there all across the board, linebacker, and then defensive backs, but we haven't seen it on the field the last 2 seasons at all.
Yeah.
And so I think Matt and I are probably cautiously optimistic about the defense, but it's one of those things to where it's like, until we see it, we're not going to believe it.
Yeah, they could be our worst unit. They could be our best. Like, honestly, like I wouldn't be shocked if we had like 2 guys on the all conference team, but I also wouldn't be shocked if it was,
we're dead last
2 years ago. And yeah, we're just giving up big play after big play. Yeah.
If you guys had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
I think Fall. Especially if he gets to playing time. I think I read a stat on him where he had, I think, some like, what was it? Disruptions in the backfield. It was some stat about how he could get back a havoc rate, I believe is what it was. And his havoc rate was off the charts in what little playing time that he had last year. And so if you see him more of a rotational piece and more game time or game experience, I think you'll see him really be a standout in terms of tackle for loss and sacks, and could really play his way into being a starting defensive end and being on one of the all teams at the end of the season.
I'll say Justin Rhodes. He had a good year last year. He was a transfer from a small school. I think one of the surprise stories, but I think he could have a breakout year. Excited that he's back. He had 38 total tackles last year, but just 1.5 sacks. I would not be surprised if he adds pretty significantly to those numbers.
If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.
Yeah.